Quotation from myself, segment 80, quotation number 970. On August 6, 1945, Americans dropped the first atomic bomb on Hiroshima. In a few seconds, the city was destroyed and tens of thousands of people were killed. 50 years later, on August 6, 1995, American television devoted 90 minutes of yet another program to tell us what went behind the scene of this already universally known and well-documented historical event. A lot of the old and some new information was provided about planning and execution of the bombing. The parts played by different members of the American administration of the day, their relative degree of involvement and share of responsibility were analyzed and speculated upon at length. And yet, having learned all this, I was left with the same nagging question I always have after watching similar investigative reports, which purport to uncover some hidden, unrevealed, hitherto truths about the well-known political and social occurrences. And the question is, who cares? What does it matter who was personally responsible for the decision to use the bomb? President Truman or Secretary of War Henry Stimson? Or if it was decided collectively by a group of politicians and generals, do we really have to know their names, whether they were unanimous in their decision, and if not, who voted yes and who no? Or whether it was done to save the lives of American soldiers, getting ready for invasion of Japan, or to scare Russians, a warning to Joseph Stalin that the United States was not to be pushed around, and so forth and so on. And while it may be interesting and useful for modern historians and political sciences looking for application of their inquisitive and professional energies, exercise, it could not raise Hiroshima from the ashes, not resurrect its inhabitants killed in a nuclear blast. And even from purely historical point of view, in a few hundred years, the names of almost everybody involved, their personality, their motivation, etc., will be no more important and as justifiably forgotten as the names of Nebuchadnezzar generals. All that will remain in history are the most significant indisputable facts. In the first instance, the destruction of Hiroshima and deaths of tens of thousands of its inhabitants from an atomic bomb in August 1944, and in the second effect, that somewhere around 596 BC, the city of Jerusalem was sacked by the army of Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar, and the thousands of Jews who survived the devastation were carried into Babylonian captivity. All the rest are just the historical footnotes, slowly turning into dust as they richly deserve. And now the time has come to address the more immediate problem, one that is concerned not so much with the past but with the present, and which greatly exercises nowadays the imagination of both the extreme left and the extreme right, albeit from a different perspective. The problem of conspiracy theories and the suppressed or withheld truths which the ordinary people are deprived of by the deceptive and sinister machinations of the powerful but anonymous cabals. Now, considering the fact that all these suspicions flourish despite the unprecedented amount of information available today to every Tom, Dick, and Harry, does it make any sense, and shouldn't we dismiss such people as simply paranoid. Surprisingly, the answer to the first question is yes, it does, and the second, no, we shouldn't. For first of all, it's quite understandable that the more we know, the more we want to know. We can call it information addiction. But what is even more important, what is even more important, dare we say crucial in this case, is that though everyone is sold by now on the idea that the knowledge equals power, yet it is abundantly clear from our everyday experience that it is not the case, that while our knowledge increases almost exponentially, our power to act upon this knowledge and to influence the events that affect our well-being progressively diminishes. And we are actually more powerless today to do so than our ignorant ancestors. But this maxim, knowledge equals power, is so ingrained in modern psyche that it is perfectly natural thing to assume, as for the far left and the far right do, that the knowledge which does not translate into power must be the wrong knowledge, not the true one, and that the empowering knowledge is denied them by those possessing the real power, and not by the despised government of the day, about which we all know more than we wish to. Perhaps the bitter truth, the one they cannot accept, and which probably is the main cause of frustration and anger of both right and left revolutionaries, is that there is no other truth, that they already know more than enough to act upon it, and that what they really lack is not some hidden knowledge, but the courage and resolve to do so and change the situation which makes them unhappy, frustrated, and powerless. But to return back to the question of adequacy of information we possess, or in other words, how much do we really have to know, both quantitatively and qualitatively, to feel well informed? First of all, it is clear, even to some not familiar with Hegelian dialectics, that as far as information is concerned, the quantity and quality of it are inseparable, and the duality in this case is artificial as in many others. Secondly, it should also be accepted as almost axiomatic that all the information one received, not only from external sources, but even from one's own experience, is both limited and distorted. The real question then is how much it is limited and distorted, and what could be done practically to rectify it. And for this, the knowledge of causes of it hardly matters if one can do nothing about them. By analogy taken from nature, the knowledge of causes of earthquake, for example, is irrelevant to our safety. What is important is to find the best way to protect people and property from its effects. And so in politics, one has to know the facts, while the motivation and machination of those who have caused these facts to happen are all, for all intent and purpose, irrelevant as well. To go back to history, one cannot escape it, can one? We all know that the World War II has started on September 1st, 1939, or that Nazi Germany attacked Soviet Union on June 22nd, 1941. We also know all the basic facts: number of divisions, tank, artillery fielded, what city was destroyed, how many people get killed, etc., etc. In all these basic facts, the destruction, the suffering cannot be changed. Whether it was a result of international conspiracy, well thought out military plan, or Hitler madness, or the numerous accidents life is so full of. Thus, in all our search for some hidden truth, the most we can find out is that some politicians had lied, some generals blundered, and some news media men and historians connived in it. So what? The politicians always lie, the generals invariably blunder, and there is more than enough people in the media and social sciences who would eagerly connive in concealment and distortion. Is this the hidden truth we have to waste our time and energy to search for? The dead have nothing to gain from it, and the living will go on, as they always did, learning nothing from the past, and repeating the mistakes of their forefathers again and again. Admittedly, the character and motivation of the major historical figures must be an interesting subject for psychologists to analyze, or for budding politicians honing their art of popularity and deception, the examples to imitate. But for the rest of us, the ordinary people, it is by curiosity, fascinating perhaps, but ultimately irrelevant and forgettable. And as for those who took part in these events, and especially ones who became their victim, it hardly matters. One who is killed or maimed isn't going to benefit from finding what was the real motivation of the killer or assailant. And so, to repeat it, it is not the scarcity of information, but the lack of the means to act upon it that should be the main concern of those who have already plenty of the first and very little of any of the second. And not just to act, but to do it when it still matters, and not post factum, after the game is over, and what is left for them is to play Monday quarterback, an admittedly poor substitute for the real thing. 971. Those who are forever trying to maintain the optimistic myth of the fundamental human decency, and to convince us, and probably themselves, despite the overwhelmingly evidence to the contrary, that men and women are essentially good, I would like to refer to any sizable dictionary, each of which contains hundreds of terms evolved to describe human depravity, the terms that withstood the test of time, and have been proven to be useful tools for a numerous generation to comprehend the depths and the extent of villainy their fellow men and women were capable of, and not, as some optimists would like us to believe, just unfair and slanderous invention of a few hopeless misanthropes. 972. Sometimes I wonder if all those numerous but minor and essentially harmless irritants, annoyances and discomfort that each and every one experiences almost daily throughout life is not the way of nature to prepare us for the inevitable few real tragedies nobody could be spared of sooner or later.